itself in each and every day. I'm also looking forward to working with Shirley Bond as the leader of the opposition. Shirley and I have been colleagues for 15 years, and although we disagree on many, many things, there's a mutual respect that's been built up over many, many years, and I wish her all the best as she embarks on her term as the leader of the official opposition. Similarly, I look forward to continuing to work with Adam Olson and Sonia Furstenau from the Green Caucus. We accomplished a great deal working together in the last Parliament, and I'm confident we can continue to work together on the many issues that affect British Columbians now and into the future. And with that, I know there's a lot of questions. I'm happy to answer as many as I can.
We're going to start with a question. We're going to start with a question from Shannon Waters. Go ahead, Shannon.
Hello, Premier. I wanted to ask about mental health and addictions. We just got another heartbreaking update about the number of British Columbians who died from fatal overdoses in October. The province is en route to potentially having the worst year it has ever had when it comes to this public health emergency. Can you tell us how your cabinet's approach to this issue might change and ramp up in the future?
Well, we have been working tirelessly over the past 3.5 years before COVID arrived, to knock back the number of people whose lives were taken from opioids. The addiction crisis continues. I'm sure, and I'm confident that Sheila Malcolmson, the new minister responsible for mental health and addictions, will be diving right in first thing tomorrow morning to get working on the issues that Judy Darcy had made such great progress on. We have committed through the election campaign to more treatment beds. We've committed to working with police chiefs and with the federal government and local governments as well to make sure that we decriminalize and destigmatize addictions. These are critical steps forward. But the biggest challenge we face right now is COVID-19 and the impact that's having on people, the impact that's having on our ability to get to those who are using, those who are struggling with addictions, those who are experiencing overdoses, and that has led tragically to the loss of life over the past number of years. I know that all British Columbians are committed to working together to address not just COVID-19, but also the opioid crisis and the climate crisis. These concurrent issues need to have our attention every single day, and having a standalone minister who's focused on that was a commitment I made in 2017 and recommitted to today.
Do you have a follow-up, Shannon?
I do. First of all, are you planning on increasing your investments in mental health and addictions? And then also, the City of Vancouver is looking for a workaround when it comes to decriminalization, essentially going it alone, with the province not planning to move forward without the federal government. Vancouver is planning to ask for its own variance. What's your reaction to that move?
Well, we in 2017, we directed that we would not prosecute simple. So we were already acting on those issues. What I believe we need is national leadership. It's a criminal code issue. I've talked to the Prime Minister, talked to the federal government through the Intergovernmental Relations Ministry, and we're working cooperatively with the federal government, and we want to continue, of course, to work with the City of Vancouver and other municipal governments on these issues. But at the end of the day, what we need to do is make sure that we're helping those who are struggling, and that means putting more frontline workers in place. And as we get into the budget process for this coming year of 2021, 2022, I know that there are going to be requests and calls for more resources, and we're going to do our level best to meet those. But safe alternatives, prescription alternatives to get safe supply is an issue that the community has been talking about for a long time. We want to make sure that we can realize that by doing it in a way that makes sense to everybody. And I know that Minister Malcolmson is going to be focusing on that first thing tomorrow morning.
Our next question is from Rob Shaw, Vancouver Sun.
Oh, hi, Premier. Could you speak a bit about Ravi Kahlon's ministry involving economic recovery and jobs? How does that fit into the kind of plan for government to recover from COVID when we're sort of in the middle of this second wave?
Yeah, well, Minister Kahlon is taking on an enormous responsibility. There's a lot of bits and pieces in the ministry. We've added a bunch more through the transition process. The recovery initiatives that we announced in September will now be overseen by Ravi. We have had a cross-government approach to recovery from the beginning, but Ravi will be the point person, and I'm confident that he is going to make sure everything that we can do will be done so that the economic recovery that we need to follow from the second wave and into the therapeutics and other options. As you, Carol, doesn't just bring competence. No, Rob, and we the First Minister's meeting for the swearing in. I'll be talking to Nick LeBlanc, the Intergovernmental Affairs Minister federally, to catch up on the events of today. And I have a very positive working relationship, as you know, with the federal government at this time, and we're going to continue to do what we can to make sure that British Columbia is front and center, not just on pandemic relief, but a whole host of other initiatives that we believe, working cooperatively together, will improve the lives of British Columbians.
Justine, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thanks. The federal government has been warning that there's a limit to its pandemic aid. Walk us through the gaps, please, between what your government has asked for from Ottawa and what it has actually received.
Well, on the pandemic side, we did very well, all provinces. We've been meeting regularly, as you know, for months, weekly with premiers and then with first ministers, Minister Freeland initially and now Minister LeBlanc. And I'm very confident that the gaps as we find them, we're doing our best to fill them. A good example would be on transit and on municipalities. Those were areas that were not discussed initially in the March, April, May period. It wasn't until we got into July and August, as we were getting the recovery funds together at the federal level, that we highlighted the importance of, we started here in British Columbia and other provinces followed along, the importance of making sure that that public infrastructure had the same level of support that some of the private sector firms were getting from the federal government. The Prime Minister agreed, Minister Freeland agreed, and we were able to flow some $2 billion joint federal provincial monies to transit, TransLink, BC Ferries, and of course municipalities. So the gaps as we find them, Justine, we attempt to try and fill them at the moment. One example would be the $250 million for education that came admittedly late in the preparing for the start of the school year in late August, early September. But that's $250 million we were able to put towards making sure that we had cleaning capacity within our system, make sure we hired enough support staff and teachers to do the work that was required to make our K-12 system safe. So my approach, and the approach that thankfully is being embraced by the federal government, as we bring issues forward, we talk about them in bilateral relationships, and then we talk about them at multilateral tables with other provinces to get the resources and the cooperation and the collaboration on the issues that we need to. When it comes to the vaccine, for example, the distribution of vaccines, we believe we're well advanced here with the infrastructure. Dr. Henry agrees with that. We have more work to do, to be sure. But we've always tried to lead the way at these conferences and always tried to demonstrate our ability and our capacity and our desire to work effectively and collaboratively with the federal government.
Our next question is from Richard Zisman, Global. Are you there, Richard? We will come back.
I'm here.
Oh, he's
There
there.
you go.
Can you hear me, Jen?
Can now.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Did Minister Rob Fleming ask to be moved out of education? And what can you say about the shift in education, considering how many challenges and criticisms there have been around some elements of the back-to-school plan?
Well, first of all, Rob served at my request as the critic for education for 2.5 years before I asked him to serve as Minister of Education. He was able to negotiate with the BC Teachers Federation the first collective bargaining agreement between the two parties in decades. He's done a very, very good job. I'm proud of the work that our government has done to bring peace back to the education sector. But during these difficult times, the very challenging times for families, for teachers, for other people who work in the system, QP members and other support staff, administrators, these have been very challenging times. And I'm proud of the work that Rob and the government has done to lay the table for that collaborative approach, responding to the need for troubleshooters, for example, to make sure that when issues emerge, we were able to address them right away. Rob was front and center on those issues. Very proud of the work that he's done, but I wanted to move him on to other activities. He's got a background in economic development. He wanted an economic ministry. Transportation infrastructure was available because of the retirement of Claire Trevena. It seemed an appropriate move, and I'm very excited about what Jennifer Whiteside is going to bring to the table with her understanding coming from the health sector, operating a large organization with diverse stakeholders, which is very much like our K-12 system. We want to focus on kids and outcomes for children. We want to make sure that the environment, the work environment, and the educational environment is as robust as it can be, and Jennifer's up to that task.
Do you have a follow-up, Richard?
Considering recent stories in Ontario and Alberta, can you say whether, as the Premier, you ever interfered with any of the health orders that Dr. Bonnie Henry has put in place, or have you ever provided advice to Dr. Henry around putting in specific orders to help benefit BC's economy?
No, I've never interfered. That's not how Minister Dix, Stephen Brown, the Deputy Minister, and Dr. Henry and I operate. My deputy, Don Wright, as well as my Chief of Staff, Jeff Meggs, are in daily contact with public health officials, daily contact with Minister Dix, have been for months. We come to conclusions based on the best advice we get from public health, and then we implement those decisions in the best interest of British Columbians. And I can't certainly recall, in fact, I know I did not interfere in any way. We made a decision early on that the challenges that we were facing were not going to be short-term challenges. It wasn't going to be a couple of months and we're back to normal. We knew this was going to be grueling. Issues and events around the world have proven that out. And I'm very comfortable with the approach that we've taken from public health to the Minister of Health to the Cabinet and then decisions being made. I want to tip my cap to Minister Mike Farnworth, Public Safety and Solicitor General, from the emergency management perspective. Our approach has always been, how do we find solutions to these problems? We resisted, and I remember some criticism at the time. There was lockdown, question after question during scrums at the early part of the pandemic. Dr. Henry's approach, Minister Dix's approach, my approach was, let's find ways to safely operate. Let's find ways to keep the economy going with public health front and center. We were successful in the first wave. We've got challenges today, but we have a track record of success together with a collaborative approach, and I'm going to continue doing that.
Our next question is from Binder Saj, NCTV.
Hi, Premier. Just wanted to ask you about Selena Robinson taking over as Finance Minister. Just wondering what it is that you saw in her as Housing Minister that made you think she would be a good fit for this role.
Well, Selena and I have been working together since she was elected in 2013. I knew her before she was elected to the NDP caucus at that time. I have a tremendous trust in her capacity. I gave her an awful lot to do on the housing file, on the municipal affairs file, and throughout the pandemic, and you can confirm this with any mayor, any councillor around British Columbia, she was available every day, every week, every month for the past 9 months to make sure we were sharing information, we were hearing back from communities what the challenges were. It was her effort that got us to the table with the federal government to start talking about resources for municipalities. Her understanding of the people of British Columbia is unmatched. I'm very confident that she will be an outstanding finance minister. I'm really looking forward to working with her.
Binder, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just back to the vaccines. I'm just wondering how it works when you talk to the federal government about the vaccine supply. Right now, BC has way more active cases per capita than Ontario and Quebec. Is that something that figures into the discussion, or how does it work?
Well, that's an interesting question because at the front end, of course, you'll remember British Columbia's case count was quite low relative to other jurisdictions. And at the time, we continued to talk about per capita funding, whether it be for safe restarts, whether it be for other initiatives about making sure PPE was distributed as it came into the country. There were shortfalls, you'll remember, at the beginning of the pandemic, not a concern today. So we've always worked, from my perspective, that all provinces are equal, and all provinces have, despite that, all provinces have different needs and different requirements. So I believe we'll continue to work. I know that we're going to, if we listen to public health, if we try to break the circuit that's seeing transmission get out of hand in Fraser Health, but not exclusively in Fraser Health, I think we can get back to a place where British Columbians can be comfortable that we've done our individual part and our community part to bend the curve back to something that's more acceptable. As we await the vaccines, however, we need to be preparing for that, and that's the type of thing that Dr. Henry and Minister Dix bring to Cabinet. We talk about that. What resources do we need to deploy when those vaccines become available? But the procurement, the distribution, or the creation and procurement of the vaccines is a federal responsibility, and we're going to be working with other provinces to make the case. Not been represented in NDP activities until today. But I looked at the skills and the with partnerships when we're talking about rights and title as being affirmed, not being fought, which is how previous governments had approached these issues. So Murray knows the law better than anyone in the legislature. I can't think of a better person to do this work.
Tanya, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, please. So you have your cabinet in place. You've got the next sitting penciled in on the calendar for December. Talk about the priorities now going forward, and specifically with this $1,000 campaign promise for families. Can you now guarantee that will be done by Christmas?
I can guarantee that the legislature will be returning, but we'll have a full debate, and I can't speak for the official opposition. I can't speak for the Green Caucus. We'll have debate. Legislation will be prepared. We will pass it. But we will have the debate that our legislation and any legislation, quite frankly, deserves. Governments introduce bills and open legislatures, oppositions close them. So that question's better asked to the Leader of the Opposition and the Leader of the Green Party. But it's my commitment to get the work done as quickly as possible. Officials in the Ministry of Finance have been working on the logistics since the writs were returned and the majority government was confirmed by Elections BC. The caretaker period was over and that work was begun. So I don't know of any obstacles at the administrative level. The obstacle would be, can we get the legislation passed? And we have a majority. I'm confident we'll do that. Whether the checks get out to families and individuals before Christmas is a factor that will involve administrative issues that I can't predict, but it will certainly be in the not too distant future, either in December or very, very early in January.
Our next question is from Lisa Yuzda, News 1130.
Hi there, Premier.
Hey.
Looking to education, being that Minister now, Jennifer Whiteside, is new and being in such a challenging ministry, what do her priorities need to be? And what kind of guidance are you giving her in this very challenging ministry?
Well, the mandate letter sends out pretty clearly the task for the minister. That's how government started. That's how we started back in 2017, and the government before that, and the government before that. So the mandate letter directs the activities of the ministry within government. But Jennifer knows the challenges in the system right now, and she'll have the full support of myself and also former Minister Fleming. The professional public service has been working on these issues for a long, long time. We have in place, as you know very well, Lisa, we have plans in every school in British Columbia. We have trustees, we have administrators, we have QP staff, we have BCTF staff, all working together to troubleshoot, to find problems, and do our best to resolve them. Minister Whiteside will pick up the ball where Minister Fleming left it and continue to advocate for children, to continue advocate for a safe continuance of our K-12 system until we can get to a place where we can get back to what everyone would like to call as normal.
Do you have a follow-up, Lisa?
I do. When you talk about, the biggest problems that she needs to solve, I'm wondering what those are, and is one of those a broken relationship between the BCTF and government?
Well, I wouldn't characterize it a broken relationship, quite frankly. It's the responsibility and the right of members of the BC Teachers Federation to express their concerns to the employer, which is the school boards and the government. That is a relationship that has been in place for some time. We did negotiate under Rob's leadership and the leadership of the current executive of the BC Teachers Federation a collective agreement that addressed a bunch of issues that had been left outstanding by the former government. We implemented the elements of the Supreme Court decision that was won, hard fought by the BC Teachers Federation. I wouldn't characterize it as a broken relationship at all. I would characterize it as a dynamic system that involves a whole bunch of people. Most important in all of those people are the children. And as long as the BCTF and the professionals that get up every day to go to our schools, whether they be education assistants, administrators, clerical staff, teachers. Everybody's focused on the best outcomes for kids. That's not a broken system. That's a system that has a lot of moving parts, and it's our responsibility, not just government, but all of the players that I just mentioned, parents as well, to make sure that all those moving parts work seamlessly together. That's our objective. Will we meet that objective every day? Maybe not. But every day we need to try to make sure we're doing the best we can to get a quality education for our children in a safe environment for the people who work in our schools.
Next question is from Fran Yanner, the GOAT. Are you there, Fran? Okay, we're going to move on to Les Lane. Are you there, Les?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Hi. Premier,
Hey.
I count one full-fledged cabinet minister from outside the south coast, the lower mainland. You've got two, but one's just a minister of state. Is that kind of a hole in your lineup?
Well, no, I think that our lineup is quite diverse, Les, as you know, different than I've ever seen in my 15 years as a member of the legislature. And we're working as best we can to make sure that the new people that have come in get the grounding that they need to be good MLAs, which is not insignificant work, and make sure that they're preparing for the work of administering programs and delivering services for people. Nathan Cullen, Minister Cullen's responsibilities is to work with Minister Conroy to break up forest lands and natural resource operations. When we were sworn in 2017, it was my desire to have a standalone Ministry of Forests, something that the former BC Liberals had rolled in to what is now one of the most unwieldy ministries within government, forest lands, natural resource operations, and rural development. So Minister Cullen's job is to work with Minister Conroy to disaggregate that and take component parts and move them to where they might be better utilized. And when that work is complete, that will become then, I'm hopeful, again, we'll see how the work goes, a standalone Ministry of Forests with rural development attached to that, and lands and natural resource operations as a standalone ministry as well, which would be a full ministry with significant human resources and so on. So this was, I talked at length with my outgoing Deputy Minister, Don Wright, and my incoming Deputy, Lori Wanamaker, two career professional public servants. I expressed my desire to have two ministries where one existed, and they said, great ideas, but you don't want us to do that in the next 2 weeks, do you? And although I did, I took their good advice and said, let's find a way with a 4-year mandate ahead of us to do this correctly. The ministry was created by Gordon Campbell just days before he resigned as Premier. If you go back through your files, Les, you'll remember that. And so the ministry was created, and the person who created it left the building. And it's been existing for a decade or almost a decade without any amendments or revisions. And I think it's an important part of our economic vitality, certainly for us, but also to have the permitting and other processes separated so that they can have a standalone minister. Another point I want to make is Finn Donnelly is the Parliamentary Secretary for Salmon and Fish, Salmon and Aquaculture. Finn's task is to work with Lana Popham, the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries, but also to work with Minister Cullen and to work with Minister Heyman to take those component parts that are spread across government, the provincial government, and bring them into one place so that we can focus on being equal partners with the federal government when it comes to saving our salmon for this generation and future generations. It's something I know Finn is very well suited to do. A standalone Ministry of Fish did not make a lot of sense. It was tried in the past. The primary responsibility, the primary jurisdiction rests in Ottawa. I wanted to make clear to Ottawa that British Columbians care deeply about salmon. They care deeply about the impacts of salmon aquaculture and the jobs that go with it. So to have Finn Donnelly, the parliamentary secretary, to address all of those bits and pieces in government is part of what I think a renewed government with a majority mandate should do. So we're going to be doing some reorganization. We're not tipping over the apple cart. That would be inappropriate. We're doing it in a thoughtful way. Minister Cullen will be part of that. Parliamentary Secretary Donnelly will be part of that. Minister Heyman will be part of that as we build out what we believe will be a more coherent system for decision making.
Do you have a follow-up, Les?
Don't make me say that again.
Yeah, thanks. Does your change at the top of the Education Ministry reflect dissatisfaction with all the tension and anxiety and confusion about how to keep schools open safely?
No, not at all. As I said before, I think Rob Fleming did an outstanding job under very, very difficult circumstances. Education is a challenge because of the diversity of stakeholders that at their core come together to care for children and give them a quality education. This is not simple, and it's certainly not simple in the midst of a global pandemic. I believe that the change will be good for the system, it'll be good for the two ministers, and the outcomes will be there to be judged in the future.
We're going to go back to Fran Yanner, who I believe is on the line now. Are you there, Fran? Oh, no, we've lost Fran again.
Hello?
Oh, no, we haven't.
Go
ahead.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I wasn't on mute, but we'll try it again. Premier, my question is on the spirit of collaboration and cooperation referenced by Lieutenant Governor and yourself today. And the new opposition leader has said the pandemic has brought parties together in a common cause, and she opened the door to the idea of tackling more issues together. Just wondering, given the changes since October 24th, if you see promise here for more opportunities to work more cooperatively.
Absolutely. I said in my opening remarks that MLA Bond and I, Opposition Leader Bond and I have worked together for 15 years as adversaries, admittedly, but we share a lot of commonalities, and I have great respect for her, and I'd like to think that it's mutual, and I'm confident that we'll be able to work well together. I'm also very confident that she will hold me accountable as I did her. I think that's a positive relationship, and Shirley and I are mature enough to take these things in stride. I know that she will be quick to respond to any failings of mine, but I also know she'll be quick to offer support where it's required, and I look forward to that relationship as I have the past 15 years.
Fran, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, please. This one is also related. The interim Liberal leader has also indicated her party needs to go to British Columbians, especially in the urban areas, to understand what voters wanted that their party did not deliver. I'm just wondering, the NDP did very well, obviously, but are underrepresented in rural, interior, and the north. Mm-hmm. Does the government have similar plans to engage citizens in those areas, particularly the north, to understand why the government's work didn't resonate into votes?
I absolutely do. And one of the disappointments for me coming out of the October general election was only seeing a new member in Vernon Monashee and a new member in Boundary Similkameen from rural British Columbia. I spent a lot of my energies working on issues around resource development, which are so critically important in rural British Columbia. I spent a lot of time building relationships, and I still have those relationships with local governments, mayors in Quesnel, Prince George, Vanderhoof, Fort St. James, Fort St. John. Although Mayor Ackerman and I haven't talked in a while, we do know each other, and Mayor Bumstead and Dawson Creek. So I believe that the elected leadership at local government levels are prepared to work with me as I am with them, and that's where I get the best inputs on how best to meet the challenges in rural British Columbia. But as the BC Liberals have challenges in urban British Columbia, New Democrats need to work harder to make sure that our message is resonating in rural BC. And perhaps Shirley and I will cross paths in each other at the airport when I'm going north and she's coming south.
We have time for one more question, and it's going to come from Nick Johansson, Castanet.
Hi, Premier. With regard to the new mandate mask order here in BC, can you speak to how retail and other workers are supposed to discern between people who are legitimately exempt from these mask rules and those people who Dr. Henry yesterday called belligerent in their opposition to the mandate?
Well, again, I'd like to think, and our approach, Dr. Henry and I and Minister Dix, from the beginning has been, I've been talking about wearing masks as they have. If you can't physically distance, wear a mask. The demands, the requirement, or the call for mandatory mask wearing became clear to us that the public was taking advantage of retailers. I know in the restaurant sector, I spoke with the head of the Restaurant Association yesterday. I remember going into my own community into a local steakhouse where a group of belligerent, and I'll call them that as well, belligerent clients or customers were abusing two young staffers, table waiters and a receptionist about them wanting to sit at one table. That's just not the way we should act as adults, first of all, particularly working with addressing young people, perhaps in their first job. They're not there to be public health officers. They're there to serve food and to meet the needs of their customers. And similarly, in the retail sector, if people are belligerent, I believe that's where the mandatory mask mandate and enforcement is imperative. It's not acceptable to be belligerent about putting on a mask to protect other people. And I believe that the vast majority of British Columbians get that. Those that don't will be liable to fines and perhaps further, depending on just how belligerent they are. But we have always, Dr. Henry, Minister Dix, and I have always been of the view that the best way forward is not to have increased enforcement, but to have increased compassion for each other. And I believe that that should be our first, second, and third move. And the fourth move is you got to wear a mask. Don't be stupid about it. Put it on. Go buy your groceries. Take it off when you get to your car and get on with your life. This is not something that people should get overwrought about. There's lots of things in this world to be despondent about, to be angry at. Putting on a mask should not be one of them.
Nick, do you have a follow-up?
I do. With respect, Premier, my question is more about these workers who are on the front line dealing with this small minority of people who are treating this as an infringement on their freedoms and who are being belligerent, as Dr. Henry says. Will these frontline workers be required to ask for medical proof, or how will they discern between people who legitimately have issues versus this belligerent crowd?
Well, those issues are being addressed by public health as well as Minister of Solicitor General and Public Safety. Minister Farnworth had some words on that question yesterday as well. He's responsible for the enforcement components, and he'll be working with retailers and those that are on the front lines, working to provide services for people in a very, very difficult time. I hope that gets close to answering your question, but belligerent people should grow up. And those that have legitimate reasons they're not able to wear a mask, we'll be working through those issues with Dr. Henry and others to confirm what legitimate reasons to not put a mask on are, and we'll deal with that in the day.
All-wheel drive confidence. All-wheel drive fun. Tucson, now with H-Track all-wheel drive.
Yes or no question, Mr. Chair.